Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 215, being recorded on August 22nd, 2012. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Allyn Malventano.
And we are here to bring you another rousing week of hardware discussion. A quick promo. Don't forget, again, we have moved to our own dedicated channel. If you want to see us record the show live, we do it every Wednesday, 10 p.m., kinda. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific at PCPer.com/live. You should definitely come hang out and see all the sometimes a little bit not politically correct, actually most of the time, banter early on in the show. After the show, we do gaming events, typically after the podcast as well. So you want to definitely come stop by for that. Again, if you want to share the show with people, we really want you to do this. We really want you to kind of spread the word about the PC Perspective Podcast. Just send them the URL, PCPer.com/podcast. We really appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to jump into the hardware stuff, news, etc. The thing that almost happened last week's podcast, but it didn't happen because 9 a.m. is different than 10 p.m., weird how that works out, is the launch of the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 660 Ti graphics card. Now this is a $299 GPU based on NVIDIA Kepler. Kind of the interesting information about it is if we swap over to the review here, Ken, you'll see that like much as all of the rumors told us, it is in fact 1,344 cores. It has GPU boost, just as we expect. It's got 2 gigs of memory. The primary difference, you can see here if you look at the graph, it's a full GK104 chip. You're missing one of the SMX units and one of the memory controllers, and that's kind of the important feature, right? So if you look at the memory specs, or the total specs, you'll see the memory interface is 192 bits instead of 256, which actually drops the memory bandwidth from 194 gigabytes per second down to 144, which is like 35%. So it's pretty significant. Now, I know when we first talked about it and Jeremy was talking about the rumors circulating, we all kind of discussed the 660 Ti and what it could be, that I probably have said that I thought it was going to be very, very close in performance to the 670 because the only difference was this memory controller difference. As it turns out, that's not exactly the case. That memory bandwidth actually means quite a bit more than I expected it to on this architecture. The 35% memory bandwidth deficit actually resulted in about a 15%, sometimes 20% delta between the 660 and the 670, or the 660 Ti and the 670 cards. Let me go over here and switch to one of the benchmark pages that might demonstrate that. And we'll look at Battlefield 3 real quick. The results show you here, like if we look at 1080p, we're looking at 57 frames per second versus 65, but then also important is the minimums that go from 34 to 40 frames per second. So that actually gives you a decent idea of what kind of performance penalty you get for this memory controller difference of 64-bit, one of the 4 64-bit memory controllers. The video card in itself, not particularly different. Like I said, it's almost the exact same specifications, still 2 gigs of memory that still runs at 6 gigabits. There were no reference cards for this. We got cards from MSI, EVGA, Zotac, and Galaxy. And we're working on finishing up a roundup of that. I'm trying to do hardcore, I'm actually going to try to like overclock these to their limits and see if I can get any differences out of the coolers. But if you look back at the review, you'll see that there's the same configuration. You've got 2 DVI ports, you've got a full-size HDMI port, you've got a full-size display port. It still requires 2 6-pin power connections, although the Galaxy card we got did actually do a 6-pin and an 8-pin. Still 2-way and 3-way SLI support. And here you can see the EVGA card. Actually, EVGA and Zotac are kind of like these half-height, half-length PCBs, much like the reference 670s were. But if you look at the MSI card, I don't have a picture of the back of it, you can kind of tell a little bit behind there. The MSI and the Galaxy cards are full-length PCB. Also interesting, this little slide here, Borderlands 2 bundle. If you buy 660 Ti, you get a copy of Borderlands 2 for free. And actually, I think that counts for 660 Ti and above, right? Can anybody verify that? That's like 670s and 680s as well can get this?
I thought it was just 660 Ti.
I saw one.
Brian is not impressed.
I did see specifically one of the 670s with that special offer on there. So I'm thinking that it might actually be 660 Ti's and above, but they're maybe just pushing with the 660 Ti because it's new. Back here, I'll show you a couple.
You don't get it for the
pictures.
690 though.
Well, if you can afford a $1,000 graphics card, if you can afford a $60 game, you cheap SOB.
But yeah, I've seen it on 680s as well.
Oh, okay. Here you can see we've got the Galaxy card, we've got an MSI card, we've got the EVGA, and the Zotac. They all come in at different clock speeds. The default clock, the reference clock, is 915 base and 980 or 85 boost, and you can see all these retail cards come overclocked. 1006 megahertz base, 1019 megahertz base, 980 base, and 1033 base. So a lot of clock headroom in here, a lot of overclocking headroom, and I think what you'll find is while the 680 and the 670 you could buy a reference retail card and overclock it quite a bit, set the clock offset pretty high. I think you'll find the 660 Ti, if you start looking at these vendors, Zotac, EVGA, Galaxy, and MSI, that they have started to feel comfortable with the overclocking of the Kepler architecture, and so they're taking a lot more of that headroom. For example, if I go back to our overclocking page here of the story, you'll see that I even mentioned when I was first doing the real quick overclocking results, I was disappointed because we were only getting 50, 60 megahertz clock offsets on the, well, that's awesome, way to go wireless, clock offsets on EVGA's Precision X or MSI's Afterburner, whatever it is. But then, when I took into account that the card I was actually trying to overclock had already been increased 91 megahertz over its reference speed, I was actually hitting 173 total megahertz of clock offset, which is actually pretty good. So we got it up to a 1088 megahertz base clock rate and an 1167 boost clock rate. And actually, if you look at the picture there of our monitoring, you'll see that we actually were hitting 1215 megahertz on the clock. So it's pretty impressive. It's a great card. It is $299. The overclocked models are like $309, $319. It's $100 less than the 670. I think it makes a lot of sense for gamers that are doing 1080p and below resolutions compared to the other Kepler cards. Now, compared to AMD, what's interesting is the NVIDIA originally kind of pitted this against the 7870, with the 7950 kind of being a little bit further off. But in my testing, I kind of decided that I felt that the 660 Ti was the faster and better card if you're gaming at 1080p or below. If you're gaming at 2560 by 1600 or above, like multi-monitor, then the 7950 from AMD is actually a better option if we just put those two head-to-head. It was close, but it was well faster than a 7870. I think I saw a couple of people talk about a review from another outlet that showed that 7870 was or the 660 Ti was barely faster than the 7870, or kind of tied it, and I didn't find that to be the case at all. At all resolutions and settings that we used, it was easily 7, 8, 10 to 15 to 20% faster than the 7870, depending on the game. So I wouldn't really put that in the same classification. And I don't think AMD would do that actually either, based on the price cuts that they announced that we'll talk about in a little bit. You guys have any other thoughts on the 660 Ti before I go on and just briefly mention the live part that we did?
It's a nice card, I guess. And it's, it was certainly needed at that price range. NVIDIA didn't have anything except a 560 Ti and the older 570 to compete against AMD's newer stuff. When you start
need to go lower.
What?
They still need to go lower. Like $299 is great, but still they need to get. I don't understand. I guess AMD released all of their cards very quickly, based on Tahiti and that architecture, and NVIDIA seems to be taking their sweet time with it.
I have no answer for that. Why, as to the reason that they were doing that. It does seem a little odd. You'd think that the smaller chips would be coming out first, or at least in a comparable time frame,
Right.
as are a lot of the bigger stuff. And now we're coming up on about 5 months since the GTX 680.
Yep.
And AMD released all of theirs within a span of 3 months. So yeah, it's odd. I mean, we've got the 7700s, 7800s, and the 7900s from AMD, and now we've just got finally a lower $299 price point product from NVIDIA with this next generation. Maybe they just think that the 560 and below are perfectly fine for.
I looked at the Steam hardware survey recently, and the 560 Ti is still the most popular discrete graphics card in the Valves as of July of this year, right? So they have good reason to think that the 560 Ti is still doing a good job holding its own. I believe second was the 7770, I think, or the 6770. It was the next one was an AMD card of that kind of price range and stuff as well. So the 560 Ti is still doing great, and it could be that they're having stock issues, right? They want to try to sell all the 560 Ti's at reasonable prices before they start releasing like 660, 650. And shoving all that kind of out of the space. If you missed the launch day coverage of the 660 Ti at PCPer.com, you missed out on a super exciting event. We had NVIDIA's Tom Petersen in studio again. This marks like the 18th time that he's done this. We went over our review. They went over some of their highlight points. We showed a couple of demos. He did some overclocking on the fly, urged on by the chat room to overclock higher and higher, even though we had never tested any of this before going live. It was riveting entertainment. If you go to PCPer.com now, you can see the replay, the live review recap with myself and Tom Petersen here. There you go. Look at that. Look at that. It's a video inside of a video. And we walked through some demos, like I said, and that was all at PCPer.com/live, which is, if you're watching this, where you are at right now. So make sure you keep an eye on that schedule on the right-hand side of the main site or at PCPer.com/live for upcoming events. I think we're going to have one more at the end of next week with a different vendor, and then the next week after that, we're going to have another one from another vendor.
So with the video in the video, it was essentially called PC Perception.
I don't like it.
Whatever.
No, not a good. No.
Yo, dog! I heard you like your video and your videos.
This was actually, as far as our live events go, this one actually went pretty well. We started a thread on one of the subreddits, asking for people to solicit questions they wanted to ask Tom, and they had some ones like, "Hey, how come you don't let PhysX run on non-NVIDIA hardware?" And he gave pretty upfront answers like, "Hey, we spend money to develop this, and we don't feel like we need to share that with our competition." Right? We asked him some other stuff about I forget what some of the other.
Isn't that an interesting thing though? That it's a double-edged sword. They're the only one who supports it, but if they were to open up, then more people would support it. And They
obviously believe that it is a worthwhile enough bullet point on their boxes to get kind of I will use the term casual buyer as opposed to not maybe less informed buyer, that it's it's really something worth taking into account, whereas I think for the most part it is not. We showed a video at the live event, and you can see it at youtube.com/PCPer. That's like a Borderlands 2 PhysX side-by-side thing, and it's interesting, the changes that they did. It's not earth-shattering, but it is cool. I still don't like the way they make fluids and liquids look with PhysX. It always looks too Play-Doh-y or something like that to me, but they're trying to do stuff differently. I know of a couple of projects they have. They've talked about the GeForce experience, which I think will be a really interesting, unique feature that they'll have for their products and gamers that will really help them stand out. They're still investing heavily in the discrete market, right? So that is a good thing. A few other reviews we'll touch on real quick. Cooler Master Half XM. Is it pronounced half? HAF? What's our
high airflow? So half.
That doesn't tell me how to pronounce it.
It's pronounced frog.
Yes.
The Cooler Master Frog XM mid-tower enclosure. Lee Garbett, a.k.a. Robotech, makes his triumphant return to chassis reviews, as you can see here. It is a very, very popular case on the PC Part Picker website, for example. It is extremely popular on there. It's relatively inexpensive, got good airflow, I'm guessing, based on the Frog acronym. So check out that review if you have not. Also up, we had a guest writer come in and write an interesting little article, I think, kind of as a, not as a follow-up, but is inspired by Matt Smith's article about building a legacy gaming PC, going out and finding hardware to run Windows 98 and all that kind of crap. Chris Barbary? I'm sorry, Chris. I should have asked this beforehand. Project Lab building a silent PC from legacy hardware. And I think this picture kind of tells us a lot. Do we all have closets like this?
I don't have a
not
closet.
anywhere near as
I
neat.
just throw crap on the floor.
I've got a whole room full of crap.
Yeah, I have that. I have a lot of those.
And they're as old as his.
Alan, do you have spaces like this too?
In the garage. I got a huge wire shelf dealie. Yeah, same kind of thing.
So
Full of 'em.
Chris goes through the article. He talks about, okay, I actually do a little bit of audio recording. We wanted to build a PC that was, silent or close to silent, but didn't really spin any hardware. So he found some parts like a Gigabyte P35 motherboard, Celeron E3300 processor, the old classic Intel heatsink, 4 gigabytes of DDR2 memory. How about a Sapphire HD 5450? That's actually not that old. A 160 gig Caviar Blue hard drive, and a Thermaltake 430 watt power supply. And he actually did install.
I don't believe that Thermaltake 430 watt power supply still works.
Apparently it does.
You know how many of those damn things I've gone through?
Oh, really?
Not even funny.
Not funny. I'm laughing.
You don't see me laughing.
I'm laughing. Jeremy's laughing. I
Whatever.
heard Jeremy
Oh, yeah.
laugh.
Oh, yeah.
He actually did have one of those Intel Pro 1000 GT desktop, PCI NICs, which I remember using a lot of those, and then a Thermaltake N9 chassis, and there's some other stuff in there too. Now he did run into some issues, like how about that Intel cooler? Not silent at all. We use them here sometimes, and it's like the exact opposite of quiet. So he ended up going with this Cooler Master Hyper 212 heatsink. He actually ran it for a while without the fan, just as a passive heatsink, and it did work, but he was kind of worried about the temperatures that he was seeing. Switched out the hard drive for 120 gig SSD, and actually switched out the power supply for a Seasonic 460 watt silent, fanless power supply. It's an interesting look at what you can do with existing hardware that you have sitting around here. I know we have a lot of stuff sitting around here all the time, and I guess the most annoying part for me is we're always seem to be missing one thing, like we don't have a power supply or we don't have a CPU cooler, but I've got motherboards, processors, memories, and graphics cards and that kind of stuff. So it's to me, it's like always trying to find that one last piece that you need for that. I don't know, you guys, anybody else have any like legacy PC building stories? I know we kind of mentioned this already when Matt did his story a month ago or so.
Just the K62 Plus legacy gaming system I created, overclocked that to like 550 megahertz.
Wow.
High speed, low drag.
Was that with the overclock button or the overdrive button or the turbo button on the phone?
No, it's an Intel product.
No. It's just change the jumper from 450 to 550 megahertz.
Oh.
It's pretty painless.
All right.
Jumpers, remember those?
Oh, yeah.
I do, unfortunately. All right, after talking about our articles and stuff for this week, we're going to take a quick break here and thank today's podcast sponsor.
The all-new Z77 MPower mainboard from MSI is poised to change the overclocking game. Every Z77 MPower board will have a factory 24-hour military-class burn-in test completed before shipping. Additionally, performance-optimized features such as Go-To BIOS, Multi-BIOS 2, V-checkpoints, Bluetooth 3.0, and onboard Wi-Fi allow users convenience and total system control over their overclocking and gaming experience. This is the new endurance champion, Z77 MPower from MSI.
Ta-da! That's what
wow,
we
we
get.
have an advertiser.
We've waited what, a year for that to happen?
And
we win.
And already we had somebody in the chat room bitch about it. Already, ads on the live, lame. Really. Ugh. Anyway,
someone's got to pay for the beer.
It's not going to be me. I'm not doing it. Let's talk about a couple of interesting news items. First of all, how about that OnLive? Huh? Remember that company?
Yeah.
Business plans rock.
Remember that company that tried to sue me and wanted to shut me down? Yeah, who's laughing now? The owner is, because all of his employees got fired and they lost all their savings plans and that kind of stuff.
Is this the part where I fire up Gaikai on my smart TV?
Yeah, and like Gaikai was really, really late in that game. OnLive had all the momentum, and now they're apparently bankrupt, or I think the owner is really a crook, and he's like moving all the assets to some new company that they created. I don't really know what's going on.
So it's kind of like the Phantom console, right?
It sounds very similar to that. Yeah. It smells like something bad is going down. You know, it's talking about all the employees that had this meeting, and apparently they clapped at the end after they were all told they were fired, which I don't really understand that at all. So I just wanted to bring that up because that made me feel a little bit better about my day when I saw that OnLive was going out. I hope nobody listening to this show is like a huge investor in the company or something like that. So sorry about that. We mentioned this right before our break. We were going to talk about Synaptics. So touchpads, not really something we talk about a whole lot on PC Perspective, but they've got a kind of new outreach program that they're working on here. You know, they're going out and talking to people, talking to the media. They want to talk about new technologies they're bringing out to touchscreen phones, to laptops, to keyboards. They have some interesting stuff, like they have a new touchpad that is actually, they call it the force pad, and it's actually force sensitive. It can detect how much pressure you are putting down on the touchpad, even though it doesn't move. You're not clicking it. You're not actually pushing anything down. It can just...
I see you're punching your computer. Would you like some help with that?
That would be great. I noticed you were slamming your fist down with hundreds of pounds of force on your laptop. Please don't do that. It's kind of interesting. They had a cool video that is out on YouTube. I don't think we actually embedded it in our story. That talks about where that might be useful. You know, like if you're trying to, they had it for like gaming, where you know you could rotate faster. I don't know who wants to game on a touchpad anyway, but it's out there. They also had a new key that for keyboards they're making for laptops, called the Thin Touch key, and it apparently has the capability to emulate the feel of travel on a keystroke. I don't know what black magic they're using to do this, but the idea is you can get a much thinner key on your laptop, much thinner keyboard, and have more room for cooling or battery life or something like that without having a lot of the issues. Like this Lenovo laptop that sits in front of me that I use all the time has a lot of key travel in it, and that's one of the reasons why people love Lenovo laptops, is because of their keyboards. I know they've been changing things around in the last year or so, but the whole idea here is that the Thin Touch key would allow you to have the best of both of that. Now, I haven't gotten to try any of this hands-on. I was supposed to, but it didn't work out for whatever reason. Up in New York. So, you know, look around. I know Anantech has posted some great stuff on this, that they got a lot of hands-on time with it. Matt's supposed to be being sent a demo capability of this stuff too, so hopefully we'll get some more information on that. Do you guys have any... Not a lot of you guys are big laptop users. So I know, Allyn, you've got your Asus Ultrabook there. Do you think...
I'll tell you what I hate about it.
Okay. Please do.
If you don't hit those keys dead center, they don't register because they're not scissor keys. They tried to go thin, but they weren't scissor action. So you hit the key on the edge, and the key just like tilts and doesn't press. So
that's not good.
I would imagine that keyboard probably, I don't know. Hopefully it does something different than that. That's all I got to say.
Well, you'd expect to see them on Ultrabooks. They have to find different ways to make them thinner.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of like their thing was they were showing, look, we can make touchpads that are thinner, we can make keyboards that are thinner. What people decide to do with that is up to them. They could make thinner laptops. They could make laptops with larger batteries, laptops that can have higher speed processors because you have more cooling capability inside that chassis. It's all really up to them. And they had some other really cool demos and stuff too. Also interesting this week, we had MSI out on, what is today? Today's Wednesday, so he was here yesterday, Tuesday morning, another live event that if you weren't checking out the schedule at PCPer.com, you missed. And Alex was here to show off and to talk about the new MSI Z77 MPower motherboard. And we talked a little bit about graphics cards too, but the main focus was here on this MPower motherboard. What's interesting is that, I'll just read this direct quote here. It says, MPower introduces a 24-hour burn-in test that is one of a kind. Every MPower board is tested using a full Prime 95 burn-in test for 24 hours under a heavy overclock. Now, the exact specifications of that are, I think, 4.6 gigahertz, 1.32 volts or 1.3 volts, something like that. No airflow around the socket. They're using like a Corsair H100 water cooler, and they run it for 24 hours in Prime 95. Now, they're not guaranteeing you'll hit 4.6 with your processor. They're not guaranteeing any of that kind of stuff. They're not adjusting the warranty, which was one of the rumors that was going around originally. They were going to, change the warranty for people who have overclocked their systems and that kind of deal. That all stays the same. But, I wonder kind of what your guys' take is on, do you see the benefit if it's a $10, $15, $20 difference to get a board that has been pre-overclocked to the point where you know it's going to be capable of running that, right? Basically, Alex was saying it almost completely eliminates the idea of a DOA motherboard, which was not really possible before.
I think that's a positive thing. It's a bit of peace of mind, and if you live back in the times that 8-bit was shipping boards, and you have sent multiple of those products back for RMAs, maybe this little extra peace of mind is a positive thing for an extra $20 means that you won't be waiting around for 4 weeks to get a replacement. I think that would be worth your time.
But is it worth your money though?
I'd have to live without beer for 1 day.
It's worth a bit of money.
We had conflicting opinions in the chat room, right? They were like, first of all, there was this misconception, I think a lot of people may have it, was that every motherboard is tested before it leaves the factory, and that's not the case. Maybe 1 in 20 or maybe 1 in 50 motherboards, depending on the manufacturer and what the actual product is, actually gets tested, even electrically, right? That it doesn't ground out. And they used, as Alex was saying, they used statistical modeling to figure out what they should be testing and what they should expect to see based on however many thousands of motherboards they ship. With this, every motherboard is physically taken out. It has memory installed, it has a processor installed, and it's booted up into Windows, and it runs Prime 95 for 24 hours. To me, that's pretty impressive. I'd like to know how many of these they actually ship, how many they actually sell over the lifetime of it. It's only going to be, I think the MSRP is $219, so you'll probably be able to find it for $200. Depending on how, once it's out in the market for a couple of weeks. It starts shipping, I believe, next week, so it should be available anytime after that. But I really like the idea of getting pre-tested hardware, right? It's tested at a reasonable overclock, so you're not going to have, they can't guarantee it, but you're pretty sure you're not going to get a DOA board, and you're pretty sure that if your system isn't going to overclock to 4.6, it's not your motherboard's fault. It's some other component, right? So would I pay $20 to have that kind of peace of mind, process of elimination kind of taken out of the scenario? I think I would. I think that'd be something I would be willing to do. But I don't know. I build a lot of computers too, so. But I think anybody who has ever bought a motherboard and had to RMA it would probably tell you retroactively, hindsight, that they would be more than willing to have spent $20 to save the time of hassle of installing it in a case, installing Windows, running stability tests, having problems, sending it back, RMAing it, waiting 1 to 2 weeks to get it back, then do it and do all that stuff over again, right? So to me, I don't know. I'm glad it's a reasonably priced motherboard for a Z77 motherboard. You know, $219 is not too far outside of the range, so it should be interesting. Jeremy, do you want to tell me about AMD price cuts? We kind of teased this when we talked about the 660 Ti a little bit.
It's true, and I actually just popped in a Newegg earlier today, and we're starting to see the cuts. Maybe not officially, but Newegg knows what way the prices are going, so they might as well get it now. But what we're seeing is AMD has dropped the prices on their 7950, 7870 gigahertz edition, and pretty much discontinued the 7870 non-gigahertz edition from what I've been seeing, as well as the 7850. So regardless of where they put certain cards versus other cards on the
yeah, you're
little
talking
picture
about their
there,
little picture here.
at $210, 7850s do exist. On the other hand, I'm seeing 7870 gigahertz editions for about $230. And that extra $20 is going to be well worth it because these are not just base models. So it's not bad. And for the most part, it's sometimes a little cheaper than that 660 Ti. The 7950 is the sweet one. There was an XFX model that I saw at $310 after mail-in rebate. Or sorry, $330 after mail-in rebate.
Wow.
The rest of them not far off of that. So it makes it really sweet because AMD's sort of saying 320 is what we're going to be hitting, and they're already hitting it. So, hey, this is good news for the consumer. Maybe not so good news for AMD's bottom line come the next quarter, but at the same time, they've got no choice. NVIDIA's come out at price points that they've had to drop their prices numerous times. They've already done it on the top end. Now we're getting it done on the bottom, or on the lower end. It's not really the bottom end, but
Sure.
lower mid-range end. So, hey, right now, it's not a bad time to be buying a video card.
Josh, any thoughts?
Yeah, 7850 is still a pretty kicking card. If you consider that it's really about the same speed as a last generation HD 6970, it's going to run cooler, more efficient. Yeah, it's going to be a whole lot better than the 560 Ti, and you know,
210,
really,
230, $20 difference.
all right. Well, I guess the 7870 is the one to get.
It's, you know, if you look at that graphic, it is funny that how they kind of position themselves, right? Like, you know, I believe everything on the green side should be shifted up. We'll call it a half a product. You know, if we want to, you know, go that direction, I'd say the 660 Ti is pretty close to 7950. I'd say the 670 is pretty close to 7970, and the 680, I'm pretty sure is still faster than the 7970 gigahertz edition.
Yeah.
So I'm not really. It's an AMD marketing slide. It's not like anything that we saw on Newegg or anything like that. So they can take their justifications, I guess, however they want. Maybe this is in Dirt Showdown or something like that. But it's interesting. But you're right. It's a great time to be looking to buy a video card. And I think throughout the rest of this summer, it's only going to get better. NVIDIA is not going to take too much longer to get other products out, and I don't think AMD is going to be hurting. I don't think that their profits are going to, you know, take a hit really necessarily because of this. I think they had built a lot of headroom into these parts as it was because they had such an advantage and a lead out there, right? When the 7970 was initially, I mean, the 7970 came out at $130 more than it's selling for today. Yeah. Same thing
So
with the
they've evened it out. It's more about what features do you want, or do you want Dirt 3 Rally, or do you want Borderlands 2?
Yep.
Ah.
Microsoft opens registration for $14.99 Windows 8 Pro upgrades. Allyn, are you going to take advantage of this, or?
No.
No. Okay.
Not because I don't like Windows 8, just because I'll probably just do tech debt myself.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
But
This
yeah,
is
that's a deal.
It's actually just for people that are buying OEM systems. It looks like, right? So if you buy a system, PC with Windows 7, you are eligible for a discounted upgrade to Windows 8 for $15.
That's not bad.
Didn't they do this? But didn't they do it with, like, if you bought a system with Vista, you got Windows 7 for free?
That was for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
I think it was because people were so unhappy with Vista. They're like, no, trust us. We'll promise you a good operating system later.
Think back. Because they did that. They started that deal before it launched. Although wait, technically
Windows
it
8
hasn't
hasn't launched
yet.
either. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like it seems like the same time frame where they're like, you buy it with Vista, you get 7 for free.
But it's since June 2nd of this year.
So it's been going on since June 2nd?
Yeah.
If you've bought
Oh.
a system since June 2nd. Still, I think there were several months of that going on with Vista to 7.
Well, still,
Yeah,
Well, I mean, the
about
hardware
6
companies
months.
have got to have something to say about that as well, because otherwise you're stuck with a couple of months where people are like, well, I'm going to buy a new computer, but I can't
Just
do it
wait.
right now because I wouldn't have the new operating system. So I'll just wait until it comes out.
Yeah.
So
And
you
nobody
got to
wants
shoot
that.
them, a deal to convince them. No, buy it now, and for a handful of dollars, nothing expensive, you can upgrade to the new one when it comes out.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
I'm
a
fine
good
with
deal. $15 isn't bad.
No, it's not. It's
The upgrade's only $40 anyways.
yeah, and the upgrade's $40 anyway
Yeah.
if you didn't buy
That's
the
actually
system, so.
that's actually sounds good.
Well,
Like
yeah.
from like a year from now, you can conceivably buy a Windows 7 to Windows 8 upgrade for $40.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good.
Speaking of Windows 8, both AMD and NVIDIA have their drivers out if you wanted to give the new RTM a try. Or what did they have? They actually have like a consumer preview that you can download and try for 60 days free.
It's not the consumer preview. It's the RTM.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
okay. But they've released it to consumers, I guess is what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to be a TechNet subscriber or something like that to get it. Along with that, AMD released the Catalyst 12.8 drivers. If you have your AMD 7000 series cards, time to get an upgrade here. The most notable change is a 25% increase in performance in Elder Scrolls Skyrim. So, Jeremy, keep that in mind. 3% in Battlefield 3, et cetera, down the line.
Any CS:GO or UT 2004 advantages?
UT 2004 has been increased from 90 frames per second to 900 frames per second.
Yeah.
That's actually not true. That's not true. Although in Star Wars
And-
The Old Republic, the in-game cinematic no longer experiences flickers when using the arrow keys.
As compared to our podcast.
Lots of flickers
Yes.
when I use the arrow keys. What can I say?
And Ubuntu 12.04,
Yeah.
not just Windows.
Jeremy, you posted a little news story about Corsair's accelerator. I don't know. Do you have any experience with this particular SSD, Alan? This is basically their kind of low-cost SSD caching option.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. There's not a lot more to say about it.
I mean, is it?
I mean,
So can you
caching
cache your
SSDs
current SSD?
No.
Cash it in for gold?
Actually, the Intel RST driver will not let you cache an SSD with an SSD, even no
But
matter
what if
how
my
hard you
SSD
try.
is faster
Well-
than your SSD?
But this
I
one
don't
doesn't use Intel SRT. It's Invelo Dataplex, or Invelo. I'm not
Yes,
sure how it's
I know
pronounced
what that one
exactly.
is. I think that's the same software that came with the OCZ Revo Hybrid.
I believe it was.
And it works. Don't get me wrong. I just don't like. I don't like something that installs like that as a driver that does weird things on boot. You know, like it basically the way that one works is you install the driver, gives you a little prompt, says, okay, identify which is which. You know, what's the hard drive, what's the cache, and then it basically makes the cache like after you reboot, the caching device no longer appears to Windows. So something about when it kicks in its driver during boot just like gobbles up that device and assigns it to the, something behind the scenes. I don't know. I mean, it works, but it just seems more. It seems like there's more to go wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you have a funky driver doing something like that, and
I would tend to agree, but I think doesn't their software also have the capability, like if something were to happen to the SSD, it just passes through and you just use the regular hard drive.
oh
right?
sure, yeah. I mean, if the SSD
Yeah.
is gone, it should just keep using the hard drive just without the cache.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything of news for the week? It seemed like a fairly slow week. Thankfully, we had the 660 Ti release.
Somebody's talking about buying VIA, believe it or not.
For what?
Probably not very much money. The patents that they own. And they still do have a bit of a business overseas. But apparently some undisclosed Chinese company has
That
made a
would make
bid.
sense. VIA is still big in China and India, like those growth markets where they can get in their super inexpensive products. They're not demanding super high performance, so they can kind of get away with that. They, since the fall off in the U.S. market, they've definitely, been quick to jump on that train. VIA was the first to do a lot of things, right? They were the first to do low power, low performance. They weren't the first person to do low performance.
It was low power, low performance. Come on.
They were the first to kind of choose that route as opposed to try for performance, right? And I almost feel bad for them because Intel's Adam kind of came in and just said nope and pushed them away, and they kind of went to those markets where they had to. And a lot of places, I think Intel's just unwilling to cut their prices low enough to compete with, VIA in China and India. So it wouldn't surprise me if that happens. Every time I go to San Jose, like the Fremont, Sunnyvale area, I drive past their office, and I'm like, oh. I remember taking trips specifically to go visit VIA at those offices and see their new products and their new graphics technologies and all that kind of stuff, and it was a long time ago. So real quick,
VIA all-in-ones.
yeah, before we get into our hardware software picks of the week, which I have the best one. Quick reminder, if you're watching this live, we are going to try to attempt to play Counter-Strike Go, Global Offensive. You need to sign up, log into Steam, and add me as your friend. VIGILE, Vigil with an E at the end.
You're going to have so many friends.
I have so many friends.
So many friends.
So many friends. So many fake internet friends. Okay.
And you'll have so many little PMs. Hey, you got a spare video card? Got a spare video card I can
Yeah,
have?
send me your address and credit card number. All right, so here's our hardware software pick of the week. Here's mine. I'm going to have Ken switch to my computer and see who can guess it.
3DFX Voodoo.
Yeah.
Voodoo 5 series.
Are you picking that? Wow.
Oh, Voodoo
it's in
3.
the box.
No, wait.
For $30?
Where-
$30.
in
That's
the shrink
$30.
wrap.
That's $30 off. That's a rebate. Thank you very much.
It's in the shrink wrap.
Yeah.
It's in the shrink wrap.
So hold on just a second. I need to.
Speaking of in the shrink
name.
wrap,
Oh my lord.
Ooh.
take that. That was Goodwill. $1.
Wait,
They
did you buy
didn't
that?
have much goodwill against
Did you buy
you
that
if they sold
recently?
it to you.
I bought this like 3 months ago at Goodwill.
Wow. I've got a
weird.
What, a
was right next to the
440DX
slap shop, I
drive
almost
that's
bought it.
never been used? Not drive, but motherboard. One of the 8-bit, the dual processor. I can't remember the model number of that.
Doesn't
It's
matter. It doesn't
sitting
work
up in my-
anyways.
What?
It doesn't matter. It won't work anyways. Tape it.
Probably not.
So this graphics card, sorry, I'm taking a second here. This is still in the shrink wrap. It's a little bit like loose on the back. To give you an idea, the works with Windows 95, 98, and NT 4.0. It has no separate 2D card needed, but do make sure you bring a spine. Subtle curves need a card that can handle high polygon rates. Hello, Voodoo 32000. And
Hello.
that is you can't really see it up here, but that's Lara Croft from Tomb Raider, of course.
Can it play Unreal Tournament 2004?
Hold on.
No.
Is one of those
It's not a
pictures
DirectX
Descent?
8 card.
Is one of
Oh,
those
good
pictures
point.
Descent?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Because
Yeah.
I remember they made Descent specifically for the Voodoo. They
This
remade it.
supports. It has 16 megs of RAM. It runs at 143 megahertz and supports DirectX Glide and OpenGL.
Wow.
And
Sounds like an Atom.
the rebate up here, the $30 rebate, limited time offer, save $30 on the hottest video card you've ever bought for your computer. The offer is good from July 1999 to September 1999.
You should send that in.
No, I think I'd rather.
And Brian
have-
Burke will come to your door with a $30 check and a slap across the face.
Send it into a video.
I'm gonna make this my logo for our fantasy football league. Actually,
Nice.
is this video card. Hold on, and before we move on to our next pick, I had to log into a different. Never mind. I can't remember his name. This was actually sent to me by a viewer/reader/listener to our show. He said, "I heard you talk about old PC crap. and I happened to find this in a closet. Do you want it? And I was like, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
You should have seen my wife's face when I got a box in at the house, and she's very used to me opening up these products, and she's like, "Oh, what's that?" It's like, "It's a video card from 1999," and she's like, "What in the hell are you doing with that?" And
I need
was
to
You wanna
add it
see
to
my
the
shrink
stack of
wrap?
junk in the basement.
like, "What are you talking about? This is awesome."
Woo!
Oh, I'm jealous of that one too.
Uh-oh.
Voodoo 550.
Voodoo
Is
5,
that two
5500.
processors? Is that
Yeah,
two?
it's the 2 GPUs. Well, 2 graphics.
That was, for people like Ken, that was the original SLI, scan line interleave, not
Yep.
whatever bullcrap they made up now. You had the... Did it do internal SLI there, right? You didn't have
Well,
to have
it was a
cards.
digital SLI. It wasn't the analog that we saw with the Voodoo 1 and the Voodoo 2.
I still have my
so-
Monster, a BF, was it? No, Diamond? Diamond?
Yeah, Diamond had the Monster 3D. Voodoo, some monster, I can't remember.
Or there
But
was
yeah.
Alienware's bizarre little attempt where one graphics card drew the top of the screen and the other one drew the bottom of the screen. Like a weird little proprietary SLI at the time where they're trying to sell.
No, they did, yeah. If you unplug the cable, you would see half of the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those were the good old days. Okay, Jeremy, you are next. Can you beat a Voodoo 3 2000 PCIe?
Well, no, but as we mentioned earlier, there's been a recent review of these nice little accelerator cache drives coming from Corsair. So if you're still on the... We've been talking about great SSD deals, but the thing is they're mostly over $200. So you want to know what we're talking about, you actually want to experience it. How about $45? $45 for a 30 gigabyte cache drive. You plug it in, software loads, you're done, you can see it. It's $45. Give it a shot.
Look, man.
Decide whether or not
The
it's
one-
worth
the
spending
one Ryan's-
$200 on
the
a
one Ryan's
256
holding,
gig
it's not the
SSD, which is going to be even faster. It's time. Just do it. Take an old system you hate, plug it in, and see what happens. It's going to impress you.
Look at the size of my
My
box.
eyes were drying out there. Did you see the deal floating around for you could get an OCZ Revo drive? I think the original one, 240 gigs for $212 after rebate.
We saw that, yes.
Alan, did you have an opinion? Was that a great deal, or
That's,
would you not recommend
that's
that?
a dollar a gig for a PCIe SSD?
A little bit less than that, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's damn good. That's a fast drive.
it is. It is a fast drive.
It is a fast drive, and
Thanks
it's
for that
bootable.
detailed analysis of the product.
And it's bootable.
And it's bootable. Josh, what do
Hey,
you got for us?
that's important. Okay. It is.
You know, if you live in a small town and nothing ever happens here, the best thing that can happen to you and your parking spaces in front of your house is for Mumford and Sons, the band, to come to a place a block away and play a show at night. And then the wife calls and says, "Where are all the damn parking spaces?" So if you want some unhappy feelings from family members, just invite this nice little group from England to come play at a local venue. You'll be so happy.
I don't.
Did you
Think how
see
much
this?
money you
How
could
is
have
this
made
a
if you'd put a
hardware-
cinder block in the parking spots and started selling them.
So did you? go
That's
see
true.
this?
I could, if I only had some orange cones, maybe that should be my hardware pick. Orange cones, parking spaces, make some money.
Get drunk enough, you'll
Did you
find out
see
you've got a few
said
cones
Mumford
for
and
some
Sons?
reason.
Can
They
you tell me
disappear.
how this is in any way related to hardware and
Hardware?
or software?
Software. Those orange cones are kind of soft.
It's a.
If-
It's a.
Do you
Have you
wear
ever
them on
seen
your
it?
head?
It's a
I mean,
CD
have you
that
worn
to
one
put
as a
in,
hat? I mean, you should have gone through college at least once and worn one as a hat as you've drunkenly stumbled down a street.
So Josh,
Yes.
did you see these guys that were in your town, right down the street from you?
No, I didn't.
He didn't
hear-
even know who they were.
Oh,
Yeah, no clue.
a good group.
Mumford and Sons. Last time I heard of Mumford was from Beverly Hills Cop. Can we just move on? I got
Yeah,
none.
let's please do, Alan. Alan,
so now that Windows 8 preview thing that we just mentioned earlier is out, and you can do what 60 days, I think,
yeah, sure.
with the RTM code.
Why not?
Take a crack at it. Right? It's not officially released yet, right?
Correct.
And yet you can still try it. right from Microsoft. Like, here's our RTM code, just with some timeout thing on it. So throw it in a VM, and actually, Tim was saying it runs extremely fast, even in a VM.
Yeah.
Compared to
I would probably recommend that. Let me. I think. Where's that at?
So there is, for those that don't know, there is actually a huge difference between any pre-release code, even if it said consumer preview or release preview. That stuff has like symbols, and basically there's a crap load more extra stuff for the CPU to have to sift through as it's executing the kernel and everything else. So if it's RTM code, it's going to be much quicker.
Yes, Tim actually had a story from March. This was for installing the Windows 8 Consumer Preview in a VirtualBox virtual machine. And you can still do this with the updated versions of Windows 8. But I would recommend doing this because, you know, if you find something you don't like, you don't want to like format your machine and get through that whole process unless you think you are going to want to keep the operating system, in my book. Unless you happen to have extra hardware sitting around, you can just you can do that, right? Or maybe you just have a secondary hard drive that you install it on, and you can go into the BIOS and switch which one you want to boot off of and that kind of stuff. But a VM is a great way to give it a shot. The VirtualBox VM stuff is free, so you can just go download that and then install the Windows 8 ISO onto it.
Yep.
So.
And this particular kind of evaluation thing is, be careful what you Google. Don't just Google release preview. You're gonna get the wrong thing, right? You're gonna get the other thing. So the link is kind of long and obscure, but it's in the show notes under what my pick is. So just get it from there.
So go to PCPer.com/podcast.
Yep.
And we'll have it there.
And click all the links.
Click
all
the links. Yes. So that's it. That's going to wrap up our show for this week. I thank you guys for hanging out in the chat room, and those of you who came to PCPer.com/live, we really appreciate you stopping by. We are going to attempt to play some games after this. Not 100% sure how it's going to work. There apparently are not a lot of CSGO servers operating because of totally awesome Steam issues, but we'll see what we can do. We'll make it happen. If you want to help spread the word about our podcast, definitely send them to this page. There we go. PCPer.com/podcast. This is the URL. You can go. Hey, look, here's last week's episode. Look, there's Josh holding up a video card. Isn't it amazing? Week before that, we talked about, look, there's me. I've got my Sweet Sweet Lemonade t-shirt on. We did our live from QuakeCon episode there with Steve. That was exciting. So PCPer.com/podcast is the URL you should send them to for that. And of course, find PCPer on all of your favorite places: Facebook.com/PCPer, Twitter.com/PCPer, YouTube.com/PCPer. That's probably at gplus.to/PCPer if you're so inclined still. That thing exists still, right, guys?
I think so.
Still a thing.
It still exists, yeah.
It still does. All right. Well, we are going to wrap up the show for this week, guys. Thank you again for stopping by. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Allyn Malventano.
See you next week.